Now, there's only 15 times that a quarterback is thrown for 5,000 yards, and Drew Brees has the most. He has 5 times out of the 15. He's on the list 5 times. No one else is even close to that. All right, welcome to Just the Stats NFL, the show that covers the NFL statistical leaders from the all-time greats to the current players leading the NFL. So I'm Ernie Jennings, your host, and we're back looking at the final team from the NFC South. So I'm covering every team in the NFL heading into the 2025 season, and we are getting close to covering every team. New Orleans Saints is the team today, and we have 4 more teams after that, and we have covered every team, which is good. We only have 16 days until the first regular season game. And hopefully you've had a chance to watch some of the preseason games, kind of getting your appetite wet for the real thing. And if you're like me, you're also probably getting ready to draft if you haven't already started. So hopefully this episode will help you a little bit if there's any Saints that might be worth drafting in your upcoming fantasy draft. Or if there's any Saints that will be worth watching this year as far as any team records or NFL records they might be coming close to. So today, like I said, we're going to look at the New Orleans Saints. So we'll take a look at the greatest Saints, the Saints of 2024, and we'll take a look at their upcoming season. And since this is the last team we're looking at, we'll also look at the division and rate who's going to be first, second, third, and fourth. So despite finishing last in the division, the New Orleans Saints had the same record as the Carolina Panthers. All the way across the board, it was a simple down to a tiebreaker that ended up putting them at fourth and the Panthers at third. So the Saints finished the season with a record of 5-12. At home, they were 3-6. On the road, 2-6. And in the division, they were 2-4. So how do the Saints players of 2024 stand in relation to the greatest Saints players of all time and to the NFL as a whole? Well, that's what we're going to find out right now on this episode of Just the Stats NFL. So to begin with, we'll look at the coaches. And obviously, there's one coach that stands above the rest of them, and that's Sean Payton. He's the all-time leading coach for the team with 152 wins, and there's nobody really close. And, of course, this season, going into this season, they have a new coach with Kellen Moore. So he's starting from scratch. We'll see how he does. Won't take him long to move up the list. There's half the players on the list don't even have 10 wins. So if he can make it to 2 seasons, he should at least be already in the top 10. When we're looking at the quarterbacks now, get going with that. Of course, you have one of the greatest players of all time at the top of this list, and that's Drew Brees. Drew Brees from 2006 to 2020 had 68,010 yards with the New Orleans Saints. He finished his career with over 80,000, being 80,358 yards, second only to Tom Brady, who had 89,214. So 9,000 yards almost there, but then Drew Brees has over 8,000 more than Peyton Manning, who's in third. So Tom Brady and Drew Brees are way at the top. The only 2 quarterbacks to throw over 80,000 yards passing. Currently, there's nobody that's going to catch him. Aaron Rodgers is 7th on the list, but he's got less than 63,000, so he won't be ever getting that far. Now, when it comes to touchdowns throwing, Drew Brees, again, by far, has 491 touchdowns that he threw in his career. And that, again, is second only to Tom Brady. Tom Brady had 649. Drew Brees, in playing for the 2 teams he played for, like I said, 491 with the Saints and 571 overall. So he had 80 playing for another team. But second all-time, pretty big lead over Peyton Manning, who's third. And again, Aaron Rodgers is 5th, but he's not going to throw. He's got 503, so he will not be throwing 68 touchdowns to catch Drew Brees, not even close. Interestingly enough, as far as yards go, Archie Manning is second, by a long ways behind with only 21,734. And in touchdowns, he's third with 115. And I only mention that because there's a Manning that might come out of college this next season. And with the record that I see the Saints having and with the quarterbacks they currently have, which are one's a rookie, Sloth, and then Rattler, who's only had a year experience, neither one seems to be the answer to what they're having, what they need. So I think they'll have a good chance of maybe picking up another Manning for their team. We'll see. All right, when it comes to interceptions all time for the team, Drew Brees had 190. Archie Manning had 156. But Drew Brees threw an interception at 2.2% rate, while Archie Manning threw one at a 4.7% rate. Quite a bit difference, more than double. So those are your top two. And again, there's nobody to look at really. Carr was the only player last year, but he retired, so there's no one there. As far as interceptions go, Drew Brees is not on the list for that. Now, the last category for quarterbacks is sacks. Archie Manning actually was sacked 340 times to Drew Brees, who had 328 sacks. Top two for the team all time. All right, let's look at the running backs and see where we got career-wise for that. Well, obviously, Alvin Kamara, just this past season, passed Mark Ingram, who was with the team from 2011 to 2022. He had 6,500 yards exactly. Last season, Alvin Kamara passed him, and now he has 6,779 to be the top running back for the New Orleans Saints. And we'll see how much he can add to that this year. When we're looking at touchdowns for the team, again, it's Alvin Kamara with 60, and Mark Ingram had 52. Top two players there. Interesting, fifth all-time is Taysom Hill with 33. So those are your top players right now as far as running backs go. All right, and again, none of them are near anywhere on the top of the list all time, but that's your players right now. Now, looking at the wide receivers for the team, here you have some interesting players as well. All time, Marques Colston from 2006 to 2015 had 9,759 yards receiving. That's the leader. And when we're looking at receptions, we'll come back to that first. It's Colston again with 711. Now, second on the list all time is Alvin Kamara, who has 573. So he's really moving up this list. Give him a couple of years, he could actually maybe catch him. I mean, he's averaging a decent amount of receptions per year, over 50. So there's a shot for him to do this. We'll have to watch how well he does this year. But those are your top two currently. As far as active players, you have Chris Olave, who has 191. Who's only been on the team 3 years, and he could just be so much farther up the list. He just can't stay healthy enough to do that. But he's not too far behind some of these players. And if he had a halfway decent season, if he could just play the entire season, he could almost make it to the top 10. But we'll see how that goes for him. That's in receptions. And yards, again, like I said, it's Marques Colston is number 1. And Alvin Kamara is currently number 7. But he only needs, he needs less than 30 yards to move to 6th and only a couple hundred yards to move into 5th. And that's as far as he'll get this year. So a couple hundred yards receiving, and he'll be 5th all time on the team. Probably the farthest he's going to get for a while. Michael Thomas is 4th, but he's got over 6,500. So I don't see anybody catching him. So we'll watch Alvin Kamara. And again, Chris Olave is 18th with 2,565 yards. Like I said, if he could just have a decent season, he could move up this list quite a ways. But like a 1,000-yard season, he'd move up, at least 6 spots on the list. So those are your top wide receivers. Nobody's standing out really yet. Like I said, Olave, if he could just stay healthy, would be somebody you'd like to see. All right, on defense, We're looking at the defensive players. Start with interceptions all time for the team. That's Dave Waymer from 1980 to 1989, has 37 interceptions. And then Tom Myers from 1972 to 1981 had 36. Only two players with 30 or more. So it's a big drop off after those two players. Now, when it comes to the New Orleans Saints, they have a problem here. Marshawn Lattimore is ninth with 15, but he has, since this past season's moved over to the Washington Commanders. Then you look to the next guy that was on the team last year, and that's Paulson Adebo with 10, but he's with the New York Giants. You go to the next guy. Oh, that's Tyrann Mathieu with 10, but he retired. So they are going to be hurting, and hopefully they have some new guys coming in, but the top three interception leaders are not on the team anymore. So we'll have to see what happens with that. But that's rough. All right. Now, tackles for loss. Looking at that, that's Cameron Jordan. We'll see how he does. He's by far the leader. There's nobody even close. He has 160. Will Smith has 85. So we'll watch Cameron Jordan as far as tackles for loss go. But there's nobody else. Cameron Jordan currently in tackles for loss has 160, like I said, which is 10th all time in NFL history. So really pretty good. Now, he's been around the league for quite a while, since 2011. But still, that's a decent amount of tackles for loss. It's an interesting group of defensive players. Cameron Jordan with 160 is 10th. Von Miller, who also came out in 2011, has 171. And then J.J. Watt, who came out in 2011, had 195. So that class had some really impressive defensive players back then. The last category on defensive for career-wise we'll look at is sacks. And that's Rickey Jackson with 123 sacks. Rickey Jackson was with the team from 1981 to 1993. Now, Cameron Jordan, now he's getting up there in age, but he has 121.5. 2 sacks, and he'll be the record holder for the New Orleans Saints in the sacks category as well as tackles for loss. So we'll watch that and see if he can catch Rickey Jackson this year. All right, so that is your career players. Let's look at the single season and see how that racks up. And again, when we're looking at quarterbacks, Drew Brees, this is the more than even Tom Brady. This is the most I've seen. Drew Brees has the top 13 spots on the single season yards passing list. The 13th number is 3,992. Number one, he had 5,476 yards in 2011, which was a record for 2 years when Peyton Manning in 2013 broke it by 1 yard. He ended up with 5,477 yards when he was with the Denver Broncos. Those two have the top yardage. Now, there's only 15 times that a quarterback is thrown for 5,000 yards, and Drew Brees has the most. He has 5 times out of the 15. He's on the list 5 times. No one else is even close to that. So that's really impressive that he could be there. Patrick Mahomes has 2. That's it. No one else. So Drew Brees 5 times threw for over 5,000 yards. That's incredible when it's only happened 15 times. So he's got, a third of those. Now we're looking at touchdowns in a single season. Well, again, Drew Brees has the top 11. It's not quite as demanding, but still the top 11. With his best being in that year in 2011 when he had 46 touchdowns. 2012, he had 43. Came back the next year with 43 more. The 2 times he threw for over 40. So really incredible quarterback there. Now when we're looking at, and we should look at, now again, there's nobody really outstanding this past season for the team. because you had Derek Carr play 10 games and you had Rattler in there for 7, started 6, and you had Jack Hayner come in for 1 game. So it's just a hodgepodge. So no one really racked up any kind of yardage worth talking about. Even as a whole team, they had less than 3,500 yards as a team. All the players, anybody that threw the football at least one time. So nothing impressive there. So we'll look at other categories as far as how these players did compared to the entire NFL, but none of them really, as far as quarterbacks, was worth mentioning. But on a season level, the most interceptions in a single season was by Drew Brees, even though he had a record of 11-5. But that was in 2010, which being the very next year, he had that incredible year. But he threw 22 interceptions, which tied him with Aaron Brooks, who also threw 22 back in 2001. Those are your top 2 as far as interceptions go. And the last category as far as quarterbacks is sacks. How many times were they sacked in a single season? Well, that would be Aaron Brooks, only one to hit the 50 mark. Aaron Brooks in 2001 was sacked 50 times. Archie Manning had the next 3 spots. 49 was the worst he got sacked. So Drew Brees really did well. His worst season ever was 37 sacks, which is fairly impressive for even in your rookie year and so forth. You tend to get sacked quite a bit. So good in that category. All right, let's look at the running backs on a season level. Leading the category there, most rushing yards in a single season. Well, that is George Rogers in 1981. So that's been a record for going 44 years. I don't see it getting broken this year. But he had 1,674 yards in a single season. That's the best. Now, Alvin Kamara had a halfway decent season this year. Pretty good. 14 games, he had 950 yards to lead the team. That was the best. But nowhere near this. I mean, as far as team goes, that only put him at 16th as far as yardage goes. Now, when we're looking at TDs for the team all time, Alvin Kamara in 2020 broke a record he had set in 2018. In 2018, he had 14 touchdowns rushing, and then 2020 he had 16 rushing. So he doesn't get the yardage necessarily, but he does get the ball when it gets near the end zone. He is such a good all-around quarterback. Now, this past year, he had 6 to lead the team. Him and Taysom Hill both had 6. I expect to see that number maybe go up. I don't see Hill being the presence he has been in the past, but we'll see. All right. Looking at the season leaders as far as receivers going. Well, Michael Thomas in 2019 had 149 receptions, which is the NFL record. The year before, he had set, in fact, 3 years in a row. In 2017, he had 104, which turned out to be the record the first time. He's the only player to have more than 100 receptions for the New Orleans Saints, but he had 104 in 2017. The very next year, he had 118. He had 125 in 2018, I should say. And then in 2019, 149. Well, since then, it's been rough for him. He's just can't stay healthy. But 149 is the record. Cooper Kupp came close in 2021 with 145. Marvin Harrison had held the record since 2002 with 143, which if you heard one of my previous podcasts, I think it was NFL said that this was a record that would never be broken, 143 receptions in a single season. Well, it took 17 years and Michael Thomas did it. And then Cooper Kupp did it again. So really interesting. But those are as far as receptions go. That's the record. Now, yards for the team. Again, when he had 149 receptions, Michael Thomas in 2019 had 1,725 yards to be the top there. He had the second best with only 1,405. I say only, but quite a ways back. But still, he holds the top 2 spots as far as yards and receptions go. Now, last year, and this just kind of tells you the lay of their team, Alvin Kamara led the team with 68 receptions for 543 yards. So he didn't quite lead in yardage. Juwan Johnson with 66 receptions with 50 receptions had 548 yards. Those are your top 2. As far as Olave last season, he had only 32 receptions for 400 yards. So you had a tight end, running back first, tight end second, and wide receiver third. And then you had 2 more tight ends. Rashid Shaheed was 6th as far as wide receivers, so they really are hurting. But 68 receptions led the team, and 548 yards led the team. Way an area where they need a ton of improvement. And as far as TDs go, last season, Foster Moreau had 5 receiving TDs as a tight end. So, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling had 4. Alvin Kamara had another 2. So he had a total of 8 touchdowns for the team to lead the team as far as that goes. Now, all time, when it comes to touchdowns, the record is Jimmy Graham by far. 2013, he had 16 touchdowns. The next best with 3 players with 11. So again, no one even hit 10, so no one came close to this record. So this is an area where they have a lot of improvement or need a lot of improvement, and we'll see. And it's really not, I don't see it coming. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. All right, let's look at the defense. And as far as the defense goes, again, not the greatest, but last season, looking at the defense, Matthew and Adebo led in interceptions for the defense. And as I said, Matthew has retired. He had 3 interceptions, and Adebo had 3 as well. They led the team. And Adebo's with the Giants. So somebody's going to have to pick up the pace here. The all-time leader for interceptions in a single season was Dave Waymer, who had 10 in a single season. So you can see, as far as defense goes, there's a long way to go. Cameron Jordan actually had an interception, which is pretty incredible. All right, let's look at tackles for loss. Now, tackles for loss, Carl Granderson had 9 and Chase Young had 8 to lead the team, which is quite a ways off the top players. Charles Grant in 2004 had 19, Leroy Glover in 2000, and Cameron Jordan in 2018 each had 18. So those are your top 3, 19 for Grant, 18 for Glover and Jordan. But Jordan does hold 5 of the top 9 spots when it comes to tackles for loss. So he has been the dominant player when it comes to this category for the team. And the last category we'll look at is sacks. And that is Leroy Glover again, 17 sacks in 2000, and tying Pat Swilling, who in 1991, quite a ways back, had 17 as well. Those are your top 2 with 17. So that is a look at the team. And this past season, like I said, that last category, Brian Breesy had 7.5 sacks. Carl Granderson had 5.5, and Chase Young had 5.5 to lead the team. Cameron Jordan had 4. Like I said, he only needs 2 to break the team record for a career-wise as far as sacks go. So we'll see how that goes for him this year. He's kind of more of a backup player, but that might work for him to get 2 sacks this season, and he'll hold that record. All right. That's the team. That's why they finished it with only 5 wins. And surprisingly, in a way, that they even got that far. Now, Carr is a good quarterback. Not great, but he was good. Now, for this upcoming season, they have this win. Vegas has the wins over and under at 5.5 wins. positive reasons they could make that is that they have a relatively easy schedule, one of the easier schedules. They only have 5 games against teams over 500. So that were over 500 last year. So that tells you they're going to play a lot of teams that aren't that great. You would think they have a chance. Now, the negatives is their defense. As I told you, a lot of the better players are not even on the team now. So they're going to have some new people coming in, rookies, draft, free agency, and we'll see how that works. But that makes a lot of questions for the defense. And quarterback. Who is the quarterback? They can't figure this out. I mean, they both are playing. They'll both probably play the final preseason game some to see who it is going to be, Sloth or Rattler. But neither one, honestly, seems like the quarterback of the future for the team. No one's standing out. So we'll see what happens. But honestly, this over-under at 5.5, I put them in under. I don't see them getting 5 wins again. Other teams in the division and who they're playing have really improved more, I think, than they have. I mean, in fact, I don't even know if they're going to get to 5 wins. They should be rooting for if they can make the number 1 pick in the draft and get the quarterback that they really need to have. All right. Well, so not too good for the team outlook. How about the fantasy outlook? Well, Alvin Kamara is really the top player here by far. He's been going in the early 4th round. And if you're in a PPR league, which is really all I really talk about, and it's all I play, I'm not really into standard. But PPR-wise, he's really a good player. I mean, last year he had 68 receptions. So in a PPR, that's great. He had 950 rushing yards, and you throw in another almost 500 yards receiving. He's a good second running back for you. And if you can somehow get it, he could even be your third. But he's going in the early 4th. So if you pick a hero running back and wait till the 4th and pick up Alvin Kamara, you've really got 2 good running backs. Chris Olave is going in the mid 7th. And that's really not based on his talent, but it's his injury. Like, for example, I won't pick Olave. I don't care where he is in the draft. He'd have to be like in the 10th round or something. I just don't want to even bother with him. I wouldn't want to play him. I mean, I want to play him, but there's not really a good quarterback. He gets hurt, so you don't even know how long he's going to last. And obviously any player can get hurt, but some people just seem to be prone to getting hurt, whatever reason. So Olave is somebody I'm not really messing with, but if you are interested in him, you can get him in the mid 7th round. And who knows, if he could stay healthy, he would be a decent, especially for somebody you pick up in the 7th, he'd be a decent pick. Now, Rashid Shaheed is the only other player really to look at, and he's been going around the 12th round. Again, if he's somebody that stays on the field, he could have a better season. He's got some talent there, but we'll have to see how that goes for him. But he's the only other player, and you can pick him up pretty late in the draft if you're interested. Really not many players on this team that you want to bother with. No quarterback, no really, top wide receiver. Alvin Kamara, I've picked him up every year. People hesitate on him because of his age, but honestly, there's nobody else on the team. Then who the quarterback's going to be dumping that ball off regularly, and he's the guy that's going to be catching the passes. So Alvin Kamara is definitely the guy. If you're going to pick anybody from this team, he's the one. All right, let's take a division outlook. Who's going to win the NFC South? Last year, Tampa Bay Buccaneers were first with a 10-7 record. Atlanta Falcons finished 8-9. Carolina Panthers and New Orleans Saints brought up the rear. I think that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were going to win the division again. In fact, they only went 10-7. I predict them to even have a better record. The Atlanta Falcons, and I'm not making any news here, by the way, they're going to finish in the same order that they finished last year. Atlanta Falcons are going to be second. Now, the difference with the Atlanta Falcons is they went 8-9. I predict that they're going to have a winning season and could actually make the playoffs as a wild card. So that's a big step up for them. I don't think they can catch the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who I think have actually gotten a little bit better, in fact, and shouldn't lose some of the games they lost last year. But Atlanta Falcons look really good this year as well, and I think Penix is going to be incredible. just my take on him. And again, the Carolina Panthers will finish third. They do have a quarterback. This is what differentiates them between the Panthers and the Saints. Cameron Ward, now with the Panthers, is going to help them out. And Bryce Young. So I think he's going to be a big improvement. And for the team, I pick them to beat out the Saints and finish in third. Panthers in third, Saints bringing up the bottom, like I said. They went 5-12. I don't even think they'll make 5 wins this season. So the division's going to end up the same, I think. We'll see how it goes when we come to take a look at the team after the season's over. All right, well, that is a wrap for the New Orleans Saints and the NFC South Division. Next up is our final division, the NFC West. And we'll begin with a division-leading Los Angeles Rams, somebody who a lot of teams were picking to go to the Super Bowl. Now we'll see after what's going on with Stafford. We'll take a look at them the next time we come back to looking at the teams. So stick around as I continue to close in on finishing my look at every team in the NFL so you can hear about your greatest players on your team. Check out my previous podcast if your team has already been covered. All right. So I appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe to this podcast. You can catch it on YouTube at Just the Stats NFL. Of course, on any of your podcast outlets. You can contact me at justthestatснfl@gmail.com or on Facebook, X, or Instagram. Appreciate you listening. And that is a wrap for this episode of Just the Stats NFL. Sorry about that. So until next time, I'm out.